why.
This is a Fox News alert. Breaking news rocking Washington, D.C., as two key senators will vote yes to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine and Democratic Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia announcing their decisions just moments ago. Here's a little portion of Senator Collins' speech on the Senate floor.
Oh, really?
I do not believe that these charges can fairly prevent Judge Kavanaugh from serving on the court. To that leaker, who I hope is listening now, let me say that what you did was unconscionable, so that public confidence in our judiciary and our highest court is restored. Mr. President, I will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
The final vote is now expected tomorrow in what could be Mitch McConnell's biggest win of his career. The White House responding to the news with this tweet from Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Thank you, Senator Collins, for standing by your convictions and doing the right thing to confirm Judge Kavanaugh. I think all of us watched Susan Collins' speech. It was a big lead up to quite a stem winder, I think they used to call him, a big stem winder. Greg, it was an important speech, and I wondered what you thought of it.
Well, okay, so she started talking, and I started yawning, and I realized that I am missing something really huge because I'm not trained to hear it. We've spent so much time with short, loud, almost Trumpian speeches all the time. This might have been the most important speech I've heard in years because she wasn't just defending Kavanaugh. She was defending our system. She was trying to preserve an institution. And she was like, you know, when you watch shows and they say, like, you know, previously on Dallas, she was like previously in the government. She went from the beginning to the present time. It took us through every bit of the resistance, every bit of his legal background, all of the allegations. She was a hammer of reason going through all of this stuff. And she brought us from the start to the finish, providing cover for everybody else. And again, she spoke not for Kavanaugh. She was speaking for us. And so I go to Twitter, right, because I see the other media who are like me, making jokes about her, like and their male reporters mocking her, and because she's like slow or she's boring, and it's
methodical.
Like, yeah, they made the same mistake I did, but they're even dumber than me for doing that. And I mean, they're making fun of a woman, an incredibly brave woman. What she did was brave. She's going to be harassed for the rest of her life.
And she decided to do it on the merits, right? So she's like, this wasn't a partisan decision for her, Jesse, but one on the merits.
And it shouldn't have been this close. If you look at this, the media has been really complicit in spreading this disinformation campaign here. When you look at that letter that came out from Ford's boyfriend that raised all kinds of credibility issues for her, the media ignored that. The letter from the ex-boyfriend of Julie Swetnick, the Avenatti client, raise all sorts of questions about her credibility, her participating in some very unsavory things. I can't even say it on television. Her history of frivolous lawsuits and restraining orders. And then they buried the Mitchell report that had riddled with great information from an experienced prosecutor. The media buried that. And the media never talked about all the witnesses alleged that couldn't corroborate the story from Ford. And there was an interesting polling question, and I think right now it was under 50% public support for the Kavanaugh confirmation. But when the respondent is asked, well, if you were told that all of the alleged witnesses couldn't corroborate Ford, it skyrockets to over 60%. And then still things are leaking out of the story. This friend of Ford allegedly trying to persuade or tamper with some of the witnesses' sworn statements, getting them to change their story. This woman's a former FBI agent. The woman allegedly was coached by Ford on how to take a polygraph test. This woman's being represented by a lawyer who left the Justice Department in a huff over Trump's election, who oversaw the Hillary Clinton probe. Very sketchy stuff going on, and Grassley's now alluding to even more coordination between Ford and Ford's team and Dianne Feinstein and things like that. And Susan Collins mentioned these things in her floor speech today. She says these antics by Feinstein didn't help. The Avenatti accusation definitely didn't help. And everything that these people do in the hallways isn't helping. And you got to look back at this thing after 2 weeks and say the Democrats really overplayed their hand here.
Did you think, Donna, given all of your experience, that
I can't believe I sat here and listened to all of that without erupting in some form of rage.
Well, you're going to get a chance. You're going to get a chance.
Or began to show my explosive passion. But then again, I'm not Judge Kavanaugh. I don't get a chance to cry and make it all up.
Should only women cry? Should only women cry? That's very sexist to make fun of a man for crying.
First of all, I've never made fun of anybody crying. And by the way, I've seen a lot of men cry in my life, and most of the time they've cried.
I did that once after one show, okay? One show. You were really tough.
You know, if I had tissue, I'd give it to you now because I can sing right now. You would cry.
John, I do wonder, up until Susan Collins gave her speech, did you think there was a chance that the Republicans might not be able to get this confirmation done?
You know, first of all, when it comes to Senate nominations for judicial positions, the Republicans have only one speed, and that is go ahead and get it done. We saw with Merrick Garland, waiting 10 months. He didn't get a hearing. It didn't happen. We saw with Justice Gorsuch. He got a hearing, they got it done, and 3 Democrats walked across the aisle to support him. So, look, I am not going to sit here and belittle the women who have come forward. I'm not going to try to bring back old conversations about their past because they're not applying for a job, a lifetime position on the Supreme Court. Judge Kavanaugh should have expected that his life story, his life history would come up. We expect that when you run a candidate for president. We expect that. Sorry, I touch you. I'm not trying to do anything.
No, I like being touched. I'm from an Italian family. We're always touching each other.
I'm part Irish.
But no one expects to be
accused of gang rape,
like falsely accused or of something leading up to the hearing. Like you knew that his background would be there, but you can't anticipate that you'll be falsely accused.
You cannot, but you can anticipate that your past, your entire past, not just your recent past, will come up in the matter of not just hearings, but a matter of investigation. That being said, this vote will likely happen within the next 22 hours. It appears that they have the votes. We don't know. I suggest people who are still upset, people who still want to weigh in, call United States Senators, 202-224-3121, because it's not over. The ABA is now looking into Judge Kavanaugh's appearance list.
Right. But they're not going to look into Avenatti.
I would say this.
Avenatti is compare the two.
But he did not. He's not applying for a lifetime position.
But I mean, should he be actually practicing law, Avenatti?
We're not really
after what he did.
We know that he's got a great tanning deal because he's constantly tanned. But we know Avenatti.
But look who's talking, baby. You look good. You got your tan.
Thank you very much. I have makeup. Thank you. And I am getting back to being half Italian. That's a gift. Now, a couple of things. The most powerful senator, I think, from here on in is Senator Joe Manchin. I mean, he's already shown he's not just somebody who says I'm pro-gun and I'm anti-Obamacare. This is for one of the first times he's had a major impactful vote as a so-called moderate Democrat. And now he is wooable, and you can't get mad at him.
Wooable.
Yeah, that's
I love that word.
So who is wooing him?
So put it this way. It is such a narrow margin. It's such a narrow margin on everything that if he's a Democrat, they will actually go across the aisle and vote on something consequential. You can't be mad at him if you're a Democrat. But I would say this, if I can, Dana, just about this whole thing.
I just want to we just have a chance to talk about Joe Manchin in just a moment. So hold that thought. We're going to get to John Roberts. He's got some breaking news about him. But go ahead and finish.
I would just like to say this. That was one of the most comprehensive but necessary speeches that I can remember in quite some time. There were no enemies. There were no bad guys. The only bad guys was the leaker we don't know. Feinstein, I know you would never do that. Ford, I know you were really hurt. Kavanaugh, you got a great record, and I know that wasn't you. So she went out of her way not to create any enemies. She's trying to do something, and idealistically think it's possible. Yeah. She's trying to restart. She's trying to start fresh. And let's say the next thing is opioids. We make a big deal of it just passed. Stuff that we can do together, because I think we're staring at the cliff and nobody wants to jump, not Republicans or Democrats. So I think the next time you have me back here, it will probably be 2021. We'll have a situation where people are making deals again.
You won't be back.
We'll see. Speaking of Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, our own John Roberts is at the White House, and I think you have some, little color, a little tidbit about what might have happened today.
I do. First of all, to Brian's point, I think you could probably lay a pretty safe bet that President Trump, who's been campaigning heavily in West Virginia, may not make any more campaign appearances there between now and the 6th of November. We'll see, though. But clearly, Joe Manchin was a big part of this. And I am told, let's put it this way. I talked to White House officials after the cloture vote, and I said, do you think you can hang on to Manchin? And they said, yeah, we're pretty sure we can hang on to Manchin. The reason for that optimism was that this morning, Senator Joe Manchin called the White House and said that he was going to be a yes on the confirmation for Brett Kavanaugh. So that's why people around here were pretty happy today, thinking that this was going to go through. The one wild card, though, remained Maine Senator Susan Collins. She did not call the White House this morning to say that she would be a yes. White House officials told me they assumed if she was going to be a no, that she would have called to inform them of that, but they learned of her decision in real time, just like the rest of us. They were hanging on every word she said, and we were here too. The way she laid out the judicial case for Judge Kavanaugh, then seemed to pivot back a little bit on the allegations against him, but then pivoted back to the positive again. And when she did that, we pretty much knew that she was going to be a yes on Kavanaugh. So at the moment, with Senator Daines out of Montana for his daughter's wedding, you've got a 50-49 margin. If for some reason something were to happen, he could always come back. And I think it's a safe bet to say as well, the vice president will probably be around town just in case.
Don't go anywhere. Jesse, did you have a quick question?
No, I had a comment.
Is it a funny one?
No.
It better be.
No, I was only saying if I were Joe Manchin, I would have held out for more. And here's why. You remember Obamacare? Remember how they got that through? The Louisiana Purchase, the Cornhusker kickback. I mean, what did he get? I mean, I'm just saying, Obama got that through with a lot of bribes and lies, and this got through, I guess, maybe lunch, maybe a promise not to campaign in Wheeling, West Virginia anymore. I'm just saying, the way the Senate works, he could have gotten more.
Well, I think that he did actually demand a piece of wedding cake from Senator Daines when he comes back from Montana. But, you know, and this is not to say that anything like this would happen, but you'll remember that 2 years ago, Governor Jim Justice, who is a lifelong Democrat, switched his affiliation to the Republican Party. There have been a lot of people who have been tweeting me today saying they wouldn't be surprised to see Joe Manchin run as a Republican in 2024. 2024, yeah.
It's a good thing we have Donna Brazile here because she knows that Senate calendar. Thank you very much, John Roberts. I did want to ask you something, Donna. MoveOn.org and Priorities USA, two big Democratic-leaning super PACs, have announced today they're pulling funding from Joe Manchin, who might not need it anymore in West Virginia anyway, but also pulling it from Phil Bredesen in Tennessee, who's in a tight race against Marsha Blackburn in Tennessee. I mean, isn't that sort of like shooting yourself in the foot?
Well, look, I don't know how much money they had committed to those candidates, but I can tell you Phil Bredesen is somebody who still has a shot at winning the United States Senate race. So I would advise them to continue to support him. All right, Greg, what about tone here in terms of, like, Senator Collins?
I heard Trump actually said, thanks, Joe, and he said, don't mention it. What do you go ahead?
No, it's not Dana's.
I tried to find a joke that would make a 4-year-old laugh, and I think I even failed. Right. Here's the thing that drives me nuts is that, to Jesse's point about witness tampering, the media, it's another blackout. That's a big piece of this.
You brought it up yesterday.
Yeah, they're more obsessed. Yeah, they're more obsessed with ice cubes. They were chasing melting ice and not this. And I don't understand how they can let this go. I'm interested in Grassley's letter demanding the correspondence between Feinstein and, I guess, Katz, who seems to be everywhere at once. And to your point about the Bar Association, I find it weird how everybody is really silent now about Avenatti. And I'm beginning to think that even the Democrats are realizing that he plays a great role in destroying the Democratic Party, because if he had never entered the picture, you'd have just had Ford. You'd have just had one person and not this kind of crazy gang rape story.
New Yorker.
Yeah, and I think he's a Republican plant, Avenatti.
Well, put it this way.
he got Cavanetti in with that false
Greg,
claim.
I think you're 100% right. In fact, when that story first broke, the story was Democrats were saying, "What is he doing?
Yeah.
Where does this come from?"
This is not over. Don't spike the football in the goalpost right now. Whatever that old saying is, this is not over.
I didn't even know that one. It's end zone.
No, it's moving the goalpost and spiking the football.
I'll figure
and not
out
spiking the
You
punch.
guys can spike the goalpost.
Spiking the punch didn't happen.
What does this mean overall, though, for the midterms? People on the Democratic side, on the Republican side, they were motivated when it looked like he wasn't going to get through. Are they still going to be motivated if he does, in fact, get through?
Yeah, right. Like, Donna, are losers more motivated because they're angry?
32 days from now, first of all, there are many states voting. I was counting today, nine states. Early voting has already started. Next week, it'll be another 7 states. So people are already voting, turning in their ballots, going to the polls early, or getting absentee. This will have an impact on the midterm. I think you will find people galvanized both on the left and the right who will go to the polls. Perhaps they don't vote in midterm elections and will decide that this was the issue that galvanized them to go out and vote.
I was going to play a little sound, but...
Sure. No, go ahead.
Okay, so Chuck Schumer this morning, if you could pull up that call for, talking about the Kavanaugh hearings compared to the Clarence Thomas hearings. If we have that, could we play it?
The dam broke under the weight of credible allegations that Judge Kavanaugh committed a sexual assault in high school. In 2018, the Republican majority conducted a hearing that made the Anita Hill hearings in 1991 look fair by comparison.
What do you think of that, Jesse?
Well, listen, it's a huge difference in that story. Everybody knows the difference is there. But bottom line, Chuck lost and Mitch McConnell won. And it was a very huge victory for Mitch McConnell, just as big as it was for Grassley, just as big as it was for Donald Trump. Think about what happened here. You have a window, 2-year window, where you have the White House, you have the Senate, and then you have the House. And the amount of stuff that this Congress and this president got done in this very small window, historic opportunity, was enormous. If you think about 2 Supreme Court judges, the victories on trade, on ISIS, on North Korea, on tax cuts, on pipelines, on repealing the Obamacare mandate.
New NAFTA.
It's just an amazing sweep of the agenda for the conservative cause. And I think people respect the fact that this president did not back down, that Mitch McConnell did not back down. A lot of Republicans would have gotten a little squishy in this situation in the face of this hysterical Democratic and media onslaught when you're wavering on the women vote as it is, and they hung tough and they base it on facts, and I believe they're going to be rewarded for that in the midterms.
Senator Lindsey Graham says nothing has brought the Republican Party together like this has, and he hasn't seen it. And he's not somebody just to be a partisan, maybe like a Senator Inhofe, you know where they're coming from. You never know exactly where Senator Lindsey Graham's coming from. For example, he's upset at the president for being nice to the North Korean leader at the same time he's fighting for the president's candidate while golfing with him on the weekends. That's why I think he's so valuable now overall. Couple of things happened. In the beginning, it's the Me Too movement. It's Harvey Weinstein. You don't want to be the wrong side of that, and you shouldn't be. Sexual assault, serious. We understand where we should be. But it changed. It changed to, wait a second, did he do it? And this is back in high school. And what do you remember? And what happens? And all of a sudden, the people that said women should get their rights and should be heard have sons, brothers, husbands, and wonder, what if they, who are female, what if women also find themselves, have a male counterpart who find themselves in trouble? Shouldn't we broaden this out a little bit? And the third thing was, and this is my unofficial poll, is a lot of people, according to people I have met and polled, drank in high school and college, especially when the age was 18. So this one from
Did they throw ice?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's when, then one from, wait a second, sexual assault, dead serious, to, wait, I had a few beers in high school, and there were a few times when I had too many in college.
See,
and wait a second, then it got to be juvenile, and then people saying, wait, so now you can't have a beer in high school and college. If you have somebody in that hallway that didn't like you, they become a star now.
You know, it doesn't matter what age the sexual abuse or sexual assault occurred. It doesn't matter if you're 5 years old.
It matters if it occurred.
It matters, but it matters that people are able to describe their trauma and speak their truth. 1 year
You
ago,
can treat it seriously. You can treat it seriously.
Treat it seriously.
But you also should treat the accusation seriously if you're accused.
It ruins lives.
Sexual assault, yes, it ruins lives, and not just in terms of public reputation, but it ruins lives in terms of people's ability to live their life and live their truth. So look, sexual assault and sexual harassment, they are both crimes. And they were not recognized as crimes until 4 or 5 decades ago. I wrote this
Sexual
down.
assault?
Sexual assault
Was not a crime 5 decades ago?
Sexual harassment. The guidelines.
Yeah, okay, separate them, okay.
The guidelines. There's two different, as you know. Okay.
Also,
one year ago, after the Me Too movement came about, 9 members of Congress have had to resign or decline to run for re-election because of allegations of sexual assault or sexual abuse. Then there's been 2 White House aides who have had to step down or left as a result of spousal abuse. And 3 congressional candidates have lost this session. So I just want to say, for the record, this is serious. We can't make light of it. And we should allow people to come forward.
But I don't think anyone's making light of it. If I could just finish, since you were building on my point, is that of those people, they did it. So they should resign. They should get out.
See,
Brett Kavanaugh says he wasn't there. I never met her. And I think that side had to be listened to.
Can I actually say something? Because no one is treating this lightly. What you're doing, you're implicitly generalizing behavior to an entire group. You went through a series of specific examples, and you're generalizing to somebody who has, as far as we know, innocent. Just because someone else did something doesn't mean this person did it. That is actually, that's called prejudice. When you generalize behavior to people so that you take away the rights of the individual, that's actually prejudice. That's why this midterm is so important, because we need to teach the Democratic Party a lesson that they will never forget, that you don't F with our system, you don't F with our due process, and you don't lynch somebody based on some scurrilous accusations.
Justice has no partisan ring. When Anita
Not in the last 3 weeks.
Anita Hill,
come on.
Really? When Anita Hill had to be heard, it was 6 Democratic women who marched on Democratic senators. It was not about partisanship. It is about justice and allowing a woman to be heard. If you want to make this a partisan battle,
no, I'm talking about an individual. I'm not generalizing. I'm talking about an individual.
And wasn't she
Kavanaugh?
Well, and also
stick to what's happening now.
Because a Republican president wanted to see a fair investigation. That was George Herbert Walker Bush. And a Democratic chair said, investigate these claims, these allegations. That is the point I'm making. I'm not generalizing. Someone who has known discrimination, experienced discrimination, do not like discrimination or any form of bigotry.
Neither do I.
Never. Ever.
So Dianne Feinstein could have had a fair investigation if she had taken care of this when she could have in August.
What you're seeing, though, I have to. This is not about a
Ford, which is also
no, and that's why you do an FBI background check, because the FBI respects confidentiality.
This is not about a political divide.
And was the FBI hands tied in this investigation?
They talked to 11 alleged witnesses, and no one said anything different than what they swore already.
How do we know? We haven't seen
you don't believe the FBI? How dare you question the FBI?
I'm saying
it's an institution.
No Democrat walked out and said it wasn't corroborated.
I am saying, no, some Democrats walked out and said we haven't seen the whole story. I am saying that we should, as Americans, as taxpayers, we pay their salary. We should see the report. That's all I'm saying.
And if you start going down the road of seeing all FBI investigations in terms, you want to talk about a privacy issue.
Well, they can redact.
I want to see your FBI investigation. I want to see yours.
More on the breaking developments on Brett Kavanaugh's conference.